Elon Musk's net worth is approximately $300 billion. This figure is so immense that the human mind struggles to comprehend it. 300 billion. If one were to spend $1 million every single day, that money would last for 820 years. Musk is currently the wealthiest person on the planet. Yet, 2,000 years ago in Rome, there lived a man who would have made Musk seem like merely a successful mid-tier entrepreneur. His name was Marcus Licinius Crassus. And the story of how he became the richest man of his time is not one of genius, luck, or arduous labor. It is the story of a man who understood one thing earlier than everyone else. Money isn't made where everyone is looking for money. Money is made where everyone else sees only a problem. First, let's discuss the figures because it's not straightforward. Crassus's fortune was estimated by ancient sources at 200 million sesterces. Pliny specifically cited this number. Plutarch wrote of 7,000 talents of silver. If converted by metal weight, this amounts to about $1.5 billion in today's prices. Not much for someone vying for the title of richest person in history. However, a direct metal conversion is the least sophisticated way to compare wealth across 2 millennia. Economist Branko Milanovic proposed another method, measuring wealth not in metal, but in labor. How many average annual salaries of his time could a person buy with their income? An average Roman citizen earned about 380 sesterces a year. With a 6% return on his capital, Crassus's annual income was 12 million sesterces. This was equivalent to the annual labor of 32,000 average Romans, purely as a return on capital, not even counting his primary businesses. By this methodology, his fortune in modern money ranges from $100 to $200 billion, the figure cited by most serious economic historians. Musk today is worth $300 billion, but Musk owns Tesla, SpaceX, and X in an economy with billions of competitors. Crassus controlled a comparable share of an economy with only hundreds of significant players. The difference in real influence was colossal. But where did this money come from in the first place? The story begins not with success, but with utter ruin. In 87 BCE, Gaius Marius entered Rome with his troops. Crassus's family was on the opposing side. His father was killed. His brother was killed. Their property was confiscated. The 22-year-old Crassus himself fled to Spain with 300 talents of silver, all he managed to save, and hid in a coastal cave for several months, sustained by a local landowner. This was not a metaphor for humble beginnings. It was literally a cave on the seashore, with the remnants of a family fortune and no prospects whatsoever. When the political situation shifted and Sulla came to power, Crassus returned. And here, he made the first and most crucial move that defined everything else. Sulla initiated proscriptions, public lists of state enemies. Individuals on these lists were declared outlaws. Their property was confiscated and put up for sale. Most Romans shied away from these auctions like the plague. Buying the property of executed individuals was politically dangerous, morally dubious, and socially toxic. Crassus bought. He bought everything, for next to nothing. Because there was only one seller, the state, represented by Sulla, and almost no buyers. It was the elementary law of the market. When supply is enormous and demand is minimal, prices hit rock bottom. Crassus understood this and acted without hesitation while everyone else wavered. Crassus's true genius, however, wasn't in the prescriptions, but in what he did with Rome's real estate. Ancient Rome burned constantly. It was a city of wooden insulae, multi-story apartment buildings where tens of thousands lived. Without plumbing on the upper floors, without sewage, with open fires for cooking and heating. Fires erupted weekly, and every fire was a catastrophe for the owner. Property burned, neighboring buildings collapsed, and the land beneath the ashes instantly depreciated. Crassus created the first private fire department in history. 500 men, trained, equipped, and ready to deploy at a moment's notice. When a fire broke out in a neighborhood, his men arrived first. But they didn't extinguish the flames. They waited. While Crassus, either personally or through an agent, approached the owner of the burning building and made an offer to buy. Right then, at the current price, that is, the price of a burning building. The owner could refuse, in which case, the firefighters would turn around and leave. Or they could agree, and the crew would immediately begin extinguishing the fire, saving the building. Most agreed, because the choice between losing everything and selling for 20% of its value is no choice at all for someone whose home is actively burning. Thus, Crassus collected Rome, block by block. He restored the purchased buildings using his own slaves, and here lies a separate story. Crassus fundamentally did not buy strong men for physical labor. He sought slaves with professions in the markets: architects, builders, masons, carpenters, engineers, educated Greeks, teachers, accountants, managers. He created a full-fledged construction company within his household, complete with designers, foremen, and laborers. The restored buildings were then rented out or sold as functioning income-generating properties at market price. The profit margins were astronomical. Buy for 10, invest. Another 10 in restoration, sell for 100. Again and again. Across all of Rome. In parallel, Crassus owned silver mines in Spain. These mines came into his possession partly through the same prescription auctions, and partly through direct purchases from ruined owners. In 1st century BCE Rome, silver literally was money. Denarii, the Republic's primary coin, were minted from it. Controlling silver mines meant controlling a portion of the entire empire's money supply. This was not a business in the modern sense. It's akin to a private individual owning a stake in the Federal Reserve today. A third source of his fortune was the slave trade. Crassus bought slaves with potential, trained them in specific in-demand professions at his own expense, and then resold them as qualified specialists at a significant premium. An untrained slave cost a few hundred sesterces. A trained architect or manager cost tens of thousands. Crassus systematized this. In essence, he created the first historical recruitment agency combined with a corporate university. Except instead of employees, he had slaves, and instead of a salary, he profited from the difference in sale price. The fourth source was lending. Crassus lent money to everyone: politicians, military commanders, landowners. He was particularly generous with ambitious young people who had good prospects but poor financial standing. Julius Caesar, at the beginning of his career, owed Crassus astronomical sums. Crassus didn't demand immediate repayment. He demanded loyalty, political support, and favorable votes in the Senate. His money was transformed into political capital, which was then converted back into money through lucrative contracts, tax farming, and government tenders. Crassus was the first in history to build what is today called a public-private partnership. Only in his version, the state was the junior partner. This is precisely why the comparison with Musk is flawed in both directions. Musk is richer in absolute terms if calculated by metal or direct purchasing power. Crassus was richer in relative terms if considering the share of the economy he controlled. However, there is one dimension in which Crassus is unmatched among all the wealthy individuals in history. No modern billionaire has financed an army from their own pocket. In 53 BCE, Crassus equipped 7 legions, approximately 40,000 soldiers, entirely at his own expense for the war with Parthia. This is comparable to a private individual today single-handedly funding a mid-sized military campaign for a sovereign nation. No Tesla, no SpaceX, and no X combined give Musk the kind of leverage over physical reality that Crassus possessed in the final years of his life. The campaign in Parthia ended in disaster at Carrhae. The army was annihilated. Crassus was captured. According to legend, and it is indeed a legend with no confirmation, the Parthians poured molten gold down his throat. "You are greedy," they supposedly said. "Receive your gold." The truth of his death was likely more prosaic, killed during negotiations. But the legend stuck fast, because it perfectly rhymes with how people want to envision the end of a man who systematized greed. His entire fortune dissipated through heirs, political debts, and confiscations during the era of civil wars. Nothing remained, only a name that, 2,000 years later, still signifies one word: wealth.